Welcome to Sartori Studios, where innovation meets creativity.
Today, we are diving deep into an idea from Michael Sartori's Tenets Before Temples that I think is absolutely fascinating. It's this question: what makes a story feel true? We're going to unpack the hidden logic that makes some stories, even the totally made-up ones, stick with us and feel so incredibly real.
You know, it really all starts with this one simple, powerful rule from an old Hollywood writer. Give the audience someone to root for. It's so simple, right? But it's everything. When we connect with a character, when we see ourselves in their struggles, suddenly the story just lights up. We're invested.
But just rooting for someone, that's only the first step. The real question, the one we're really going to wrestle with today, is what makes a story true? And I don't just mean factually accurate, I mean true in a much deeper sense, true to some kind of internal logic that makes it all click.
And that brings us to this idea of story logic. It's the concept that stories aren't just random events. No, they have their own kind of math, their own physics. There are rules that we somehow just get. It's why if you watch a tragedy but someone slaps a comedy label on it, your brain just goes, nope, that feels wrong. So picture it like this. Stories are like these massive natural systems. They flow like a river, right? And that river can branch off into different streams. Maybe one is a comedy, another's a tragedy, but they are all following this logical, almost inevitable course down to the same ocean.
Okay, so if stories have this built-in logic, then what's at the very center of it all? Let's talk about the soul of a story, that unchangeable part, its true essence.
And who better to help us out than Shakespeare? You know the famous line, Juliet gets it. The name of a thing doesn't change what that thing actually is. Sure, Romeo's last name is Montague, but that's just a label. It has nothing to do with who he really is, his soul.
This is just a perfect illustration of that. Look at Romeo and Juliet next to West Side Story. You can swap out the names. Montagues and Capulets become the Sharks and the Jets. You can change the setting from Verona to New York City. But the soul of the story, it's identical. Rival groups, star-crossed lovers, and that heart-wrenching tragic ending. That's why it works. It's a true adaptation.
Now, let's look at the opposite. Let's look at a false adaptation. If you check out these two passages from the Bible, they use weirdly similar language. An invitation, an offering of myrrh. The surface details look the same, but their souls, they couldn't be more different. One is about pure, devoted love. The other is about seduction and destruction. Using the same ingredients to tell a fundamentally opposite story, well, that's not an adaptation, that's a lie.
And that's really the crucial point here. A true adaptation keeps the soul intact. But the moment you change that core truth, that essence, you're not just retelling a story anymore, you're telling a lie.
Which brings us right to our next big idea, the magician's lie. Because it turns out, the most powerful and convincing stories we live inside are often just really, really good tricks designed to fool us.
All right, think about any magic trick you've ever seen. They all have three parts. First, there's the pledge. The magician shows you something totally ordinary, like a coin. Second, the turn. He does something amazing with it, makes it vanish. And finally, the prestige. He brings it back and you're blown away. That structure is so important.
So, why does that matter? Because the biggest, most powerful lies in our culture, they follow that exact same pattern. They take a simple, ordinary truth, the pledge, and then they twist it so completely that we start to question what's real. And that, right there, is enchantment. It's a spell that makes us blind to what's right in front of us.
The great C.S. Lewis was all over this. He pointed out how enchantment works by taking objective reality and shrinking it down to just our subjective feelings. You think you're having a deep conversation about a waterfall, but really, you're only talking about your feelings about the waterfall. The reality of the thing itself gets lost.
And here's the trap. This is how they get us. We are often born into the story, or we walk in halfway through, right in the middle of the turn. We never even saw the pledge, that ordinary, simple truth. So we just accept the illusion, the trick, as normal, as reality.
So the big question is, how do we break free? How do we wake up from these enchantments? Well, let's take a look at how we can start to see past the spell and find the real truth of things.
I want you to consider the beautiful Japanese art of kintsugi. This is where, when a piece of pottery breaks, they don't throw it away. They meticulously repair it with gold lacquer. And the cracks, they don't hide them, they highlight them. The history of the object, its brokenness, becomes the most beautiful part of its story.
Now, what's the difference between a real Kintsugi bowl and some cheap, mass-produced imitation you might find? I mean, they might look similar, but one has a true story. It was actually shattered and it was lovingly restored. The other is just a fake. It's a lie. The difference isn't the appearance, it's the truth of its story.
This leads us to an incredible old Arthurian legend about Sir Gawain. To save King Arthur's life, Gawain has to answer a riddle. What do women most desire? And to get the answer, he has to promise to marry this hideous old woman, the Loathly Lady. He keeps his promise, they get married, and on their wedding night, she reveals she's actually under a curse. She can be beautiful, but not all the time, and she gives Gawain a choice. He can have her beautiful in public for everyone to see, but ugly when they're alone, or ugly in public and beautiful only for him. What a choice, right? What would you even do?
Gawain's answer is brilliant. He doesn't choose. Instead, he turns to her and says, "The choice is yours." He gives her the power, the sovereignty over her own self. And by honoring her true self, her real identity beneath the curse, he breaks the spell completely. She becomes beautiful both day and night. Seeing the truth restored her dignity.
And look, this isn't just some dusty old legend. This same dynamic, this breaking of spells through seeing the truth, it plays out in the real world in some pretty unbelievable ways. Let me show you a modern fairy tale. This is the story of Nick and Lex Rennick. They were both caught in a modern kind of spell, adopting identities that, while bringing them together, also led them down a path of serious harm. But then came the turn, a near-death experience that forced them to question the whole story they were living. And what followed was just a profound transformation. Lex detransitioned, her body healed in ways doctors couldn't explain, and their love was completely reborn. Out of this deeply broken past, they created a brand new, true story for themselves.
Their story, it just perfectly reflects this ancient, deep truth. That real beauty isn't about perfection or avoiding being broken. It's about redemption. It's about how even the most shattered stories, the most cursed situations, can be made beautiful in their time.
So we end right back where we started, but hopefully with a totally new way of seeing things. The world is constantly telling you stories. Stories about who you are, what you should want, what's real. The challenge for all of us then is to learn to look past the surface, to see beyond the spell, and to ask ourselves, which of these stories has a true soul, and which ones are just a beautiful lie?